Hello and welcome to 25 Days of Christmas Comics. I am your host, the Dude Without Fear, and this is day 13, believe it or not. We've hit the halfway point in our series. We've got 12 videos of Christmas stories behind us, and we've got 12 videos ahead of us still to come, full of excellent Christmas comics that I am excited to bring to you. And tonight is no exception. I had never read this story before until a couple weeks ago when I was trying to get my hands on every Christmas comic that I could in preparation for this series. I came across this one and read it and instantly knew this is going to be one of the episodes. And so it is my pleasure to bring to you a very special Christmas issue of Marvel Team Up number 127 featuring Spiderman and the Watcher. So our story starts out Spider-Man is swinging over the streets of New York on a snowy December evening. The winter winds are bitter, soot stains the snow even before it touches the ground. And yet, there is something special in the air this December night. Some ineffable magic that informs the hearts of true believers and ardent cynics alike that it can only be Christmas Eve. Because, of course, it's Christmas Eve, right? Because a Christmas comic can't happen any other day in December, people. It has to be on Christmas Eve. It's part of the magic, apparently. Because if it's not on Christmas Eve, it doesn't have that Christmas chutzpah, that Christmas pizzazz that just makes it grab you with that Christmas spirit. This is a night for love and remembrance, for great joys and small miracles, which is our title. So Spider-Man is swinging through New York on his way to Aunt May's house. Once he gets on the roof, he changes out of his spider costume into his civilian clothes, into Peter Parker. And he's about to head downstairs when he almost forgets this bag of Christmas presents that he brought Aunt May and her tenants. And so he gets into the party and everybody's happy to see him, of course. And so, he sees all of Aunt May's old buddies, and a guy dressed as Santa Claus comes up and says, "Yo ho ho, and a Merry Christmas to you, Peter. But you can't guess who I'm supposed to be." And Peter says, "The Easter Bunny?" And the man says, "Ah, you guessed." Peter says, "You know me, Mr. Chekhov, sharp as a tack." And so the party's lively. Peter's making his way around. Everybody, all of May's friends are talking to Peter and having, fun time with everybody. These old ladies, I don't want to say assault, but these old ladies come at Peter with some mistletoe, and they get their season's greetings. And so the party is lively and everybody's having a good time. And then Peter notices Santa, Mr. Chekhov, who's usually the life of the party, looking out the window by himself, and he just seems really down. And so he goes over and he asks, "Something wrong, Mr. C? You look a little down." He says, "Down, Peter? Me? Who am I trying to kid? I am down. You see, I was just looking out the window, hoping she might come. Peter asks, She? He says, My granddaughter, Betty. The only child of my boy Walter. God rest his soul. He pulls out a picture and shows Peter. Look at that face, Peter. She's an angel. And I don't think I've seen her 5 times since Walter and his wife were killed in a plane crash a few years back. Is that any way for a family to be? I called her up last week and practically begged her to come tonight. She said maybe she would. Maybe. It's funny how we cling to words like maybe. I knew she didn't mean it. I knew she wouldn't come. Peter says, Cheer up, Mr. C. It's still early. She might show up yet. Meanwhile, don't you think you should regale us with one of your poetic masterpieces? He says, Well, I did have one written specially for tonight. And he goes off to recite his poem for the other people. And all of a sudden, Peter's spider sense goes off. And he looks outside, and he knows he needs to go out. He doesn't know what it is, but he knows it's out there. He throws Aunt May some excuse that they're out of ice cream, and he really wanted ice cream tonight for a midnight sundae. And, that's a totally lame excuse. And so he runs out, and all of a sudden, this huge blizzard happens while he's outside, like just out of nowhere. Super strong winds, tons of snow, and then all of a sudden he's in his Spider-Man suit, and the snow's died down and it's back to how it was. And before him stands a watcher, and Peter's like, Who the heck are you? And the watcher just stands there. And Peter's like, Wrong question, huh? Then maybe you'll tell me how you messed with the weather and zapped me into my costume, if it was you who did it. More silence. He's like, No? He's like, Come on, you gotta say something. And the watcher extends his hand, and then he opens it, and there's a gem in it, a jewel. Spider-Man says, Oh, well, you obviously want me to take this. So Spider-Man takes it, and he's like, Why do you want me to do this? And the jewel lights up, and inside of it is the face of Mr. Chekhov's granddaughter, Betty. And he's like, Whoa, I recognize her. What does this mean? And then the watcher vanishes. He just disappears. And Peter's like, Please, whoever you are, you've got to tell me. What does it mean? And so Peter says there's 3 possibilities. Either I've had one eggnog too many, I've just been visited by the ghost of Christmas past, or there's something very strange going on here. Whatever the case, there seems to be only one logical course to follow, if logic applies to this situation at all, and that's to find Betty Chekhov. So he swings off into the night, heading towards the city, and trying to figure out how he's supposed to find this girl. And then we see the Watcher on the moon. And it says, The web spinner swings quickly off, confused and agitated, and no doubt he would be even more so if he knew that some 238,000 miles from Earth in the fabled blue area hidden on the dark side of the moon, he was being observed by the same mysterious figure who has plunged this Christmas Eve into chaos. And the Watcher is watching Spider-Man on a view screen. And the Watcher says to himself, Since time's dawn, my people have played their role in the drama cosmic, bearing witness to the eternal pageant of interstellar life in every corner of creation. But of all the myriad wonders I have ever witnesses, few mean more to me than that which unfolds tonight. With a wave of the Watcher's hand, Spider-Man's image is erased from the view screen, replaced by a scene of dark decay. The Watcher says, "Ah, Earth, your contradictions run so deep. You harbor such joy and beauty, such cruelty and despair. And you, Betty Chekhov, have known all these things in your 20-odd years. Soon you shall know more. Too often in the past have I violated my sacred trust and interfered in Earth's affairs, so that this planet I have come to love could live. For those actions I suffered the scorn and revilement of my brother Watchers. But now I find myself again drawn to help. For the threat is no less deadly than the Overmind, no less awesome than Galactus. This woman, this child, is the focal point. So stumble, child, fall." She does. "Crawl on hands and knees, consumed by a helplessness and hopelessness such as you have never felt. Before this night is done, the verdict shall be rendered. Life or death." Then we cut back to Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's swinging, and he's trying to remember where Mr. Chekhov said that his granddaughter lived. And so he stops at a payphone and calls information and fights with her over the spelling of Chekhov and trying to get Betty Chekhov's information. And finally, after this huge struggle talking to this operator, she gives the address, and he's like, yeah, that's the address, and he swings off towards that way in Brooklyn Heights. And he comes to the place, but there's all these cop cars and this ambulance out front. He's like, what the heck's going on there? So Spider-Man swoops down and spooks the cops, and the main cop in charge is trying to keep everybody calm, and he warns Spider-Man not to try anything crazy. And Spider-Man freaking grabs him by the coat and gets in his face, and he's like, look, I don't have time for this. Who is that? And the cop's like, what's it to you? And Spider-Man shakes him and says, tell me. And he's like, okay, her name's Sheila Fiore. It's like, if you know something about this, you need to tell us. We found a few $1,000 worth of cocaine in that apartment. And Spider-Man cuts him off. He's like, I don't know anything about that. And the cop says, well, pardon me if I don't believe you, but we'll get to the bottom of this soon. And the cop lights up a stogie and says, first thing we gotta do is find Fiore's roommate. Maybe you know her, buddy boy. Name's Betty Chekhov. Spider-Man's like, Betty Chekhov? And Spider-Man swings off before the cop can ask him any other questions. So our story takes us to a rooftop after Spider-Man swung through the city, hoping that his spider sense would ping Betty Chekhov's location. And, he's feeling like a failure and feeling really sorry for himself and just really wallowing in self-pity. That way that only Spider-Man can do. And he says, this is something big, something important. I can feel it in the very fiber of my being. But what do I do next? I've never felt so stupid and so helpless. And all of a sudden his spider sense goes off. And behind him stands Captain freaking America. He says, no reason to get jumpy, son. It's just an old soldier who happened to be passing by. I thought it was you sitting here, but I couldn't figure out what in the world Spider-Man would be doing on a Brooklyn Heights rooftop on Christmas Eve. Are you in trouble, son? Spider-Man says, I guess so, but it's like no trouble I've ever met up with before. If I tell you about it, you'll think I'm off my rocker. Cap says, try me. So Peter does. And Cap says, I'll admit that it's a peculiar set of circumstances, even for our line of work. But that worries me less than the despair I hear in your voice. That's not like you, Spider-Man. Your methods may be a bit unorthodox, but you're no quitter. You've had to buck the odds before, so why start giving in to self-pity now? If finding that girl is as important as you believe, get off your butt and find her. If you want help, you've got it. Spider-Man says, No, no thanks, Cap. You've already done more than enough. And I can't shake the feeling that I've got to finish this alone. And he shoots his web and starts to swing off. And he looks back at Cap and says, But thanks again, Cap. And Merry Christmas. And Cap says, Merry Christmas. Meanwhile, on the moon, the Watcher says, And so the strands of fate draw tighter, each seemingly random element forming a more purposeful whole. Spider-Man has found new strength within himself, and such strength shall ever be rewarded. And then cut back to Spider-Man swinging through the city, and his spider sense goes off. And he's like, oh man, it's the jewel. And he takes the jewel out, and the jewel shows this really shady bar. And Spider-Man's like, oh man, I know that place. That's the worst bar in town. So he goes to it. So Spider-Man goes into the bar. They think it's just a dude in a Spider-Man costume that couldn't find a Santa Claus costume. And Spider-Man roughs him up a little bit to try to get some information on where exactly Betty Chekhov's hiding at, what's going on. And so he runs into good old Joe Face, who's been behind bars 24 times. And so Spider-Man's like, if anybody knows, it's going to be this guy, and he'll tell me. And so Spider-Man's trying to get information out of him and scaring the crap out of this guy. And the dude doesn't know anything at all. And Spider-Man knows by how terrified he is that he's telling the truth. So Spider-Man goes outside of the bar, and he's just like, what the heck, man? Where is this freaking girl? Why would the jewel lead me here if she's not here? And then behind him, upstairs above the bar, in the apartment above it, there is a window open, and there's yelling going on. And inside is a man and Betty Chekhov. So Betty says, why, Buck? Why didn't you tell us the Coke was stolen? And they're not talking about Coca-Cola. They're not talking about New Coke. They're not talking about Classic Coke. They're talking about that no sugar. They're talking about cocaine. It says that of all the people to steal from, we would have never touched the stuff if we knew we'd have the mob on our backs. I was up on the roof just watching the snowfall when they showed up at the apartment. I heard the shots, Buck. I heard Sheila scream. Are you listening to me, Buck? And he says, no. And then he stands up and says, so shut up. And he just slaps the crap out of her, man. I mean, look at that slap. She just goes flying across the room. And he tells her that she talks too much, and that she might even end up talking to those goons that's looking for him, and he can't let them find her. And he pulls out a switchblade, and he's going to kill her. Luckily, Spider-Man breaks in and beats the crap out of this loser, and tells Betty it's a good thing that her boyfriend's loud, or else he wouldn't have heard them shouting. And he turns around and Betty's gone. So outside that apartment are these people that's looking for her, the mob, and they see her run by, and they see the bag of Coke in her hand. So they yell, she's got it, let's get her. And they get out and they start chasing her, and she runs, and it says, and she runs but without hope, and her flight takes her straight into a dead end. Just what her life has been since her parents died. dead end, and she falls to her knees, her head in her hands. The bag of Coke falls, and it's mixing in with the snow. And these guys are about to kill her, and Spider-Man shines his Spidey signal on them and distracts them, and they start shooting at him, and he takes them out one at a time. And Betty takes off again because she's scared out of her mind. And she turns the corner, and there's a guy waiting back there. And he points his gun and shoots her. And Spider-Man screams out no and takes that guy down. And he goes over to Betty and he holds her in his arms. And he says, "There's barely a breath left in her. She's dying." And he raises his fist up into the air. Says, "Did you hear me, you stinking manipulator? After all you've put me through, all I've done, she's..." And then the Watcher just appears in front of him. And Spider-Man says, "Aren't you going to do something? Say something? You can't just stand there and let her die." And he's like, "You can't." And he throws the gem at him, and the gem shatters before it even touches him. And this gold glittery dust comes out of it once it shatters, and it just kind of floats over to Betty, and it just envelops her. And he goes back to Betty and he says, "Her breathing's better. She's hanging on. If I can only get her to a hospital in time." And the Watcher points for him to go, and so he goes. We turn the page and we're in the hospital. And the doctor says, "It's a good thing you got her here, and you did, son. Another few minutes and we might have lost her." And Peter asks him, "Is she going to be all right?" He says, "Right as rain." And then Aunt May and Mr. Chekhov come in, and he's like, "Betty, how is she?" He says, "Look for yourself, Mr. C." And Aunt May hugs Peter, and Mr. C can't believe it. Aunt May says, "How in the world did you ever find her, Peter?" He says, "It's a long story, Aunt May." And Mr. Chekhov goes in quietly. He says, Betty, darling, it's me, it's Grandfather." And she says, "Grandfather, hold my hand, Grandfather, please, and don't ever let go." And Peter is now outside of the hospital looking up at the moon. He says, "I don't know who you are or why you did it, but thanks." And then the last page of our story is an epilogue with the Watcher, who's standing on the moon looking down at the earth. He says, "To stand eon after eon, bearing mute witness to the flow of life, shrivels the heart, desiccates the soul. So enwrapped are we Watchers in matters of cosmic import that we have lost touch with the ordinary, the mundane, the day-to-day trials of the beings we so dispassionately observe. Can I be blamed then for setting aside one night, a night so precious to the children of earth, to remind myself that creation knows no great or small? One night to reach out, however indirectly, and touch but a few of these strange and magnificent beings called men. One night to be as a brother to them. Whether Betty Chekhov lived or died would no doubt be judged insignificant by my fellow Watchers, my actions so small as to be beneath their notice. More's the pity. For tonight I have seen events of seeming insignificance grow pregnant with meaning. I have seen infinity revealed within a single human heart. I am humbled, and I know joy." This story speaks to me in three different ways, and I'll go through them in order. The first part of it is Mr. Chekhov at the party. You know, he's normally the life of the party, normally this super fun dude. But he is heartbroken because his granddaughter doesn't want anything to do with him anymore and doesn't want to come around for Christmas. I mean, that is all he wants, is just to see her for Christmas. And you know, she doesn't want anything to do with it. For whatever reason, she had ran away. You know, she was living her life doing not great stuff, you know, getting involved with drugs and the wrong people. And, you know, she was running away from the people that loved her. So, if any of you out there are in a similar circumstance, either you're the one that's ran away or you've got someone that has ran away from you and you still love them, reach out to them and let them know that, because life is too short to keep living with that stuff. It'll only bring you down. And once you're gone, or they're gone, then you're left with that feeling of, I never fixed it, and I can never fix it now. So fix it while you can. Repair those relationships, because they are super important. Second thing, Captain America's speech to Spider-Man. You know, where he's like, if you feel that this is important and that you need to do this thing, just get off your butt and do it. And you know, that spoke to me. I have a huge tendency to procrastinate and to just not do stuff that I want to do, but I just don't do it for a vast amount of reasons. And so that's the second way that this story spoke to me, is just do it, man. Like, it doesn't matter what people think of you, or what you assume that people think of you. Like, that crap don't matter, man. People are going to have unrealistic expectations anyway. Your job has unrealistic expectations of you. Your family has unrealistic expectations of you. Everybody has unrealistic expectations of everybody else. It's a very common thing. It doesn't matter what someone thinks about you or what someone may think about you. It's not their life. If you know you need to do something, do it. Get off your butt and do it. The third way that it spoke to me is with the Watcher. You know, he said that everything that his brothers would have viewed what he did to help Betty Chekhov as insignificant, because she's just like this speck in the universe, right? And no one is insignificant. No one is insignificant. Everybody matters. And that's a problem that we have in the world right now, in our country, in society, is that we've got this mindset that if someone disagrees with us, or they don't believe the same way that we do, or they don't like the same stuff that we do, that they have a different opinion than us, that we can just write those people off as if they don't exist or they don't matter. But that's bullcrap, dude. Like, people matter. Everyone matters. Every life matters. And so you can't just write people off because you deem them as insignificant. They are significant. Instead of writing people off as insignificant, we're supposed to love each other. And we don't do that. And if we did that, if we actually loved each other, and treated each other with respect and treated each other as if they were significant, then our world would be so much different than it is. We've got to get out of that mindset that just because people are different than us and just because they don't agree with us, that they are insignificant, because they're not. They are no less insignificant than you are. So if you go around thinking that you're significant but everybody else is not, who are you, bro? I need to wake up, because everyone is significant, not just you. And we've become a very selfish society and a very selfish people. And that's the great thing about Christmas, is because Christmas is like to get us out of that mindset. It ain't about you. It's a time of selflessness, and it's a time to focus on everybody else. And that's one reason that Christmas is such a great time of year, because people just kind of seem to get awakened out of that mindset for a little bit. And that's part of the magic of Christmas. And Christmas is so magical because people tend to care about everybody else. So if we cared about everybody else all year long, then we could have Christmas forever. Christmas every day, guys. That sounds free and great. But I'll guarantee you right now, I ain't making a video past video 25. That's it. I'm done at 25. I'm taking like a year off after that. This is crazy. But I'm telling you, if we would love each other and care about each other instead of just ourselves all the time and be focused on everybody else, we'd change the world. So go out there and change the world with the Christmas spirit. I hope you enjoyed this issue of Marvel Team Up. I hope that it had a message for you. I hope you were able to get something out of it. If you did, if you want to leave me a comment about that, that would be rad. I love seeing that stuff. If you liked this video, I'm going to ask you to hit that thumbs up button, because that helps me get traffic to the channel. And if this is your first time watching and you're not a subscriber yet, or a member of the crew without fear, as I call it, hit that subscription button and that notification bell, so that when I upload tomorrow's video, you know it's uploaded. And that's all I have for tonight. I hope to see you back here tomorrow. Until then, have a most excellent evening, and God bless.